Welcome to the Village Sentry interview with Michaelangelo Hamilton, Democratic candidate for newly formed Congressional District 23. My name is Fred Hadley. How do you do, Michaelangelo?
Doing great. Glad to be with you.
Okay, so we met you last week at Temple Beth Shalom. And that was the first encounter that we had with you. This will be our second. And of course, you're running in a Democratic primary with 4 other Democrats, and the winner will then face the Republican nominee in November. So the first question that we want to talk about, let me just do a little screen share, and we'll take it to, let's see, I think this is what we want. First of all, this is your website. Can you see what I'm showing?
Yes, I can. Yep, that is correct.
Make sure it's coming through. And that would be michelangelohamilton.com. And this is where people can sign up to get your newsletter, or if they want to contribute to your campaign. So let's just talk about what you're running for. You're running for Florida's 23rd Congressional District. And this is the map of the newly formed district. Most of the district, as you can see, would be in Broward County, which is roughly from about this point south. But then there's a piece of Palm Beach County. And we're interested in where it says CVW. This is Century Village West, which just made it into the newly formed 23rd Congressional District. Okay, so all right, let's get to the elephant in the room. This is an extract from the Constitution of the United States, and it says, "No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of the state in which he shall be chosen." And that's the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2. So before I ask you about that, we did bring this up in our interview with Jared Moskowitz the other day, and he's the presumptive front runner in this race. So I'm going to just play a comment. I think you've seen this clip because I sent you the video, so this won't come as any surprise to you. But anyway, let's see what Jared said when we asked him about this question.
I spoke to Michaelangelo Hamilton. He's a very young man. He would beat your record if he's elected. You say you were the youngest at the time at 25. I asked him how old he is. He says he's 22. So I ran back to my iPhone and did a quick Google search on eligibility. And according to the United States Constitution, you have to be at least 25 in order to be seated. You could run before you're 25 as long as on the day of your swearing in you have achieved 25 years of age. So I said to him, "You're not eligible. You're too young." So he pointed out, and I of course went home and researched it, that back in 1797, he was a young judge at the time, William Claiborne. He was also 22, and the Constitution was already in place for, 1789, so almost 10 years. The 25-year age still applied, and yet he was seated. Not only that, he ran again 2 years later in 1799, and he was only 24, so he was actually seated 2 times, going against the United States Constitution. Do you have any comment on that? Do you believe that he's a legitimate candidate, and why did the election officials qualify him? Do you have any comment on that?
Sure. So I met Michaelangelo once. He seems like a nice kid. He reminds me of when I was running when I was really young. So I applaud him for absolutely doing that. It's good that young people want to get involved in public service. And so I think that's great that he's running. Unfortunately, I think the Constitution is really clear. He would not qualify. He would not be seated. Using an example that's 220 years old, I don't think it will hold any weight. It's an interesting loophole, though, that you can qualify to get on the ballot because there's no age restriction to qualify on the ballot, but you would not be seated. So what would probably happen is, let's say hypothetically he won, he would not be seated by the House. The governor would then have to call a special election for the district. But listen, I applaud Michael for stepping out there, putting his name out there. It's not easy to do that, and I'm sure that he's going to run for something in the future. He should get due consideration at that time.
Okay. All right. So you've heard what presumed frontrunner Jared Moskowitz says, and you have the floor. How do you answer that? Is this just an exercise, a name recognition factor for some future race, or do you really think, based on the historical precedent, that you could be seated in the House of Representatives?
Well, first, I want to thank you again for having me and hosting this forum so the voters in your community can learn, and voters all across our state and our country can look at this interview as well. I'm doing this because I have fed up with what's going on in Washington, and I took a look into it myself, being, of course, I'm not 25, I had that knowledge, of course, and I was like, well, let's see, if anyone else did it before, and someone else did. So I believe America is the land of opportunity where all dreams are possible. We saw that in 2008 where the unimaginable occurred. And if I do get elected in the primary and the general election, I do believe that it's the people's will and that the Congress should seat me, especially if I have certificates of election from Broward and Palm Beach counties in the state of Florida, assuming I do win the popular vote in all those elections. Because the whole House under the Constitution can vote in a popular vote of all 435 or 434 whether or not to seat. This actually happened in the 117th Congress. Not the same issue with the age restriction, but there was a representative-elect who contested an election or contested a seating in or swearing in of multiple different states. They did a roll call vote, and they all swore themselves in. So if the party can provide the support, if I am their nominee, and make sure that I do get sworn in as the people's will, I believe it is possible. So I'm going to leave that determination to the voters, and so they can make a choice whether or not they want the next generation to represent them in Washington.
Okay, fine. But let's just get back to the mechanics. First of all,
Okay.
How does one get on the ballot? I understand there's either petition or you can pay a fee. First of all, let's talk about you. How did you get on the ballot? Which route did you go?
That's a great question. All of the candidates, including myself, had to pay the qualifying fee. So all of us took that route. There is no, Jared is right, there is no age restriction on qualifying because it's a federal office. The final qualifying determination is the House of Representatives, the Congress. So what would likely happen, and I disagree with my opponent, what would likely happen if I do win this race in the general election is that I would be seated temporarily. This issue would be passed on the House Administration Committee, and the final determination of what they're going to do with me would lie with that committee. They would present the report to the whole House. The whole House can do whatever they want as well. They can reject the committee and finally say, listen, he's the duly elected representative from his district, let him serve. Or they can say, you know what, we're going to vote to send this back to Florida. All popular vote, 435, the vote to send it back to Florida. Then the governor will call a special election because it's a federal office. So that would be the mechanics and the maneuver that we're going to do if we do win the popular vote in both elections, in the primary and the general.
Okay, fine. So which route did you go? Did you pay the fee or did you?
The qualifying fee, that's correct.
How much was that fee? Can you tell us that?
$10,440.
Okay. And when you applied, did anybody say, hey, you're too young? Did they even raise the issue? And where did you apply? Did you apply in Florida or do you apply do you apply in Washington? Tell us exactly how you.
Sure. So federal campaigns, you have to register in both the state and the federal election commission. So the way it works is you start out with the Federal Election Commission. You let them know that you're a candidate once you raise $10,000 or loan yourself more than $10,000. And then you go to your state government, let them know I want to be on the ballot. You go through the qualifying steps through your state. They cannot tell you, if you cannot run or not. They just have to abide by the law, the text of the law. That happened with the candidate who was thrown off the race. He exited the race because he said he was a Democrat, but he was actually a Republican in California. The state couldn't stop him. So, that's the way qualifying works. That probably will change with the Supreme Court's decision coming up on a particular case. I don't remember the case, but they're trying to make it more where the state government can actually control what happens in these federal elections or any election.
So when you filed, you had to fill out a form, I assume. Did they?
That's correct.
Did you state your date of birth on that form, or don't they even ask you that?
Well, you take an oath. You take an oath to support, defend the Constitution of the United States, and you take the candidate oath, and it says also in there that you would be considered a qualified elector. I consider myself a qualified elector based on those facts, so I'm going to leave that in the hands of the voters. Okay,
very good. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the event that you do pull off a major miracle in both the primary. Now, all right, let's go back to my screen share here, and just want to go over a couple of more things if we can. All right. So of course this is Claiborne, which is your legal precedent, who was the same age as you in 1797. The Constitution had just been ratified in 1789, so it's barely 10 years old. Of course, these are the other candidates that are running against you. We'll briefly mention them. Presumptive frontrunner Jared Moskowitz, Broward County Democratic Caucus Chair Hava Holzhauer. I believe that's a typo. There's no T. Then you have Lauderdale Commissioner Ben Sorensen and candidates Alan Ellison and Michael Trout. Oh, so all right. And then these are, of course, the Republican candidates in the primary. Whichever one of those wins will face off. Just a little information for everybody. The website of the election supervisor is PBC Elections with the S on the end of it, .org. Don't forget the S. And the most important tab on here is My Status. Anybody can click on this. You'll be asked to put in your first name, last name, and date of birth, and it'll tell you your status, whether you're registered, what party you're registered in, and most importantly, whether you're enrolled in vote by mail, which used to be what they called absentee ballot, but they've gotten away from that because it has a sort of a negative connotation. And just very briefly, here are the key dates. If you're not registered, you've got until July 25th to register or change your party affiliation. Of course, if you want to vote in the Democratic primary for Michaelangelo or any of his opponents, you had best make sure you're a registered Democrat before July 25th. Then the early voting will commence 10 days before primary day, which will be August 8th, which I believe is a Saturday, and it runs through the second Sunday. There's no voting on the Monday between the 21st and the 23rd. That's like a day when they move the machines around, I believe. And if you do early voting, it could be anywhere at any early voting location. You don't have to vote in your home area, but as long as it's in Palm Beach County and a designated voting location. All of these locations, of course, are on the website. And now what's become more and more popular, of course, COVID had a lot to do with it, is vote by mail, VBM. And the deadline for requesting a mail ballot is August 13th. And the mail ballots for those that are enrolled are actually going out this week. I believe they're going out this Tuesday, so they should be in the hands of the voters. Now, as far as the sample ballot goes, I found out from the election office that won't be mailed to anybody that's enrolled in vote by mail, because the vote by mail is in effect both a sample and an actual ballot, meaning you'll have time to study it. People that are not enrolled in vote by mail will get a sample ballot right around the beginning of early voting. So that's the story on that. And of course, primary day is 7 to 7. If you wait until primary day, you must vote at your assigned location anywhere from 7 to 7. And it's also the last day to return your mail ballot. The early voting for Century Village will be at the West Boca Branch Library over here on the left. And here's the map of Century Village on the right where it says home. You just go up to Yamato, make a left, right on State Road 7 and make the first left, and that's your early voting location. Make sure you bring photo ID. All right, one of the key issues that I've been fighting ever since I got down to Florida, where I thought it was paradise, is the pre-harvest burns of sugar. And you know, I hate to keep harping on this, but it's important because I'm an environmentalist. We should all be environmentalists. We're living in paradise. We want to preserve it. And what exactly are we talking about? Well, sugarcane, first of all, is the most important crop in Florida's economy. It's bigger than all the other crops put together. And the value of the sugarcane is in the stalk. There's no sugar in the leaf. So what the industry does is they take a shortcut. Instead of cutting off the leaf, which would be green harvest, they burn it. They burn it away in a 20-minute controlled burn, and this puts a lot of smoke and soot and poisonous carcinogens into the atmosphere, and this has caused tremendous health impacts in the sugar growing region around Laco, Pahokee, Clewiston, and the Glades area. Now, first of all, the leading presumptive leader in this race, Jared Moskowitz, has accepted $2,500 from U.S. Sugar. So let me ask you about yourself. Have you taken any contributions from any of the sugar industries in Florida?
I have not, and I will continue to reject super PAC donations. You know, my opponent, Jared, is the pick of, I would say, the political establishment here in South Florida. He took, you know, big sugar money. He takes these special interest money as well that are working on his behalf. And I think the voters should definitely look at that heavily. And, you know, the next generation is not, you know, going to take this. And, you know, we look forward to, you know, make our case, hopefully in a televised debate as well. But yeah, I completely reject sugar money. I believe Florida should be a leading example for environmentalism. We should make sure we protect our beautiful state, especially with climate change coming, and continue to worsen in our country. Yeah, absolutely do. That's correct.
Okay. Now, I know you saw the interview. I sent you the clip, and he tries to have it both ways, Jared Moskowitz. On one hand, he says, well, you know, I've raised over $1 million, so what's $2,500? You don't think that I'm going to owe the sugar growers anything over such an amount that's such a small part of my total campaign? So I said, well, that I can accept, but if it's such a small part of your campaign, why not return that money? Why not say, I'm going to join with many of my Democratic and Republican candidates in saying no to big sugar. There was a bipartisan thing that Brian Mast, who's a Republican, and the lady Escanami, I think is her name. She's a representative. She's a Democrat, and they started this movement that we elected officials or candidates just should not accept money from an industry that refuses to go green and is causing so much harm to our environment. And I asked him, why not return that money? And he said, absolutely not. You know, he didn't have any interest in doing that. What do you suppose he's thinking when he takes that money, knowing that all of his colleagues in government are not taking that money? I know you can't know what he's thinking, but what do you think he's thinking?
Well, I'm going to leave that. I can't, know what he's thinking, but what I can tell you how I rationalize it and how I would deal with the situation is I would reject that money. I mean, I know they're going to want something out of it. Big sugar, that's the way they bribe off politicians. That's the legal form of bribery. They know this local government can't do anything. It's a federal land, transaction, right? Based off of my conversation with experts on this issue. And, they pay off members of Congress. They continue to get what they want. And that's how things are done. And especially as a Democrat, I believe that we should be more stronger as a party on climate change. If it is part of the $1 million he raised, I don't have that type of money, unfortunately. But if it's such a small amount, why not return it back? I'm going to leave him to defend his record on that. But what I can tell the voters about myself is that I never took that money. This was all self-funded. This started with a small vision, a big vision with a dream, and trying to make this happen for all the people in our country, in our state, in our district. So I can't say what he's thinking, but I'm gonna let him make that case to the voters.
Okay, very good answer. By the way, you say you're self-funded. I did look up to try to find out how much money you've raised, but not all of the candidates have done a filing yet. Have you filed?
That's correct.
So have you filed? Not yet, or is there
the deadline is the 15th. So what I can say is that I put the filing fee, I loaned that to my campaign, and that's the only thing we've raised. But we're going to continue to push forward, continue to make the case. Hopefully the voters will take a look at the ballot when it comes out soon, like you mentioned. Study all the candidates, because this is an important historic election. If we do win the primary, we've done something that's not been seen in over 200 years in this country, especially as a person of color and minority. I believe that weighs heavily as well. So the voters should really take a look at all their options, and I put myself out there, to give the people a voice and a chance to, be able to send the next generation to Washington.
Sure. Okay, let's go back to my screen share, and we'll bring up other issue here. Oh, by the way, just so people know, this is what green harvest looks like. They actually have a machine that you feed the stalk and leaf into the back end, and it separates them. It strips the leaf off. It all takes about 3 seconds. And then there's a man here with a stick that guides the cane, which is where all the sugar content is, into a separate pile from the leaf. The leaf, by the way, can be used to manufacture household goods, or can be used as mulch. So it's a very good idea, this green harvest. Unfortunately, it's only been embraced by Australia and a few other countries, Thailand, and I think somewhere in South America, Brazil. They've stopped the burns of sugar. So now the next thing is, let's talk about, again, the presumptive leader in this race, which would be Jared Moskowitz, and his 2 appointments in 2018, while Jared was serving in the House, the Florida House. He was appointed by Republican governor, I might add, Ron DeSantis, to Florida's Division of Emergency Management. And he accepted that appointment. He served in 2019, the middle of 2020. He did resign from that position because of a health issue with his father. And subsequently, later that year, DeSantis appointed Moskowitz to another position, which is Broward County Commission. Obviously, there must have been a vacancy. Normally, you're elected. Now, there is an article in the Jewish Insider, and they quote Stephen Tauber, professor of political science at the University of South Florida. He said that Moskowitz's service in the DeSantis administration, he was the only Democrat appointed by DeSantis, could hurt him in the Democratic primary, given the governor's posture towards Democrats. And he says, for me, anything that DeSantis touches is trafe. Weiner told the Jewish Insider. So I would be a little suspicious of Jared Moskowitz. So, by the way, I assume you're not Jewish, right?
No, I'm not.
Well, just for you and a lot of my viewers that are not familiar with the word trafe, it's a way of saying something is not kosher. Kosher either refers to, has to do with dietary laws in the Jewish religion, and it has to do with the humane slaughtering of animals. If they're not slaughtered humanely, they're not considered kosher. It also has to do with the types of animals that kosher Jews eat. For example, pork or any form of shellfish is not considered kosher. And also mixing milk and meat products. For example, a person that observes kosher dietary laws can never eat a cheeseburger, for example, because cheese is dairy and hamburger is meat. Okay, so obviously, and Jared is Jewish, by the way, so he understood that. Do you think that that's right? Do you think that he is treif or unkosher, that he's been tainted because of his dual appointments by Governor Ron DeSantis?
Well, what I will say is, first of all, it does look a little concerning how close he is with the governor. You don't just get 2 appointments for no reason, right? So maybe he has a good relationship with the governor. No matter what, I think it was great that he served in those capacities. And now what I do have a particular issue with is running for something when you haven't been elected for so long. That's what I do have an issue with. Why you're going to go to Broward County, our county commission, just to go turn around and try to run for Congress. That's the only issue I have. He seems like a great guy. I'm sure, it's nothing, major, but it is a little concerning. I think that's something the voters should take a look at, especially in this Democratic primary. Maybe he has a good relationship with the governor. It is a little concerning. I think that's something everyone should factor into when they're making a decision this election.
Okay, and looking into the crystal ball, you of course are aware of the January 6th hearings and possibly an indictment coming against Donald Trump, possibly a conviction, possibly jail time, although we've never done that in this country, locked up a former president. So if that were to happen, then Ron DeSantis has positioned himself to possibly be the next Republican nominee for the president of the United States. If that were to happen, and Jared was a congressman, if he wins this race, do you think he would, still be on DeSantis's favorite list? And how do you think that would play out in that scenario if Ron DeSantis became the next president?
So if I understand the question right, are you asking as far as the January 6th hearing with Trump, or you're talking more about DeSantis?
What I'm saying is the January 6th thing, that's just
Right.
the precondition. I'm saying, assuming that he is not able to run in 2024 and that Ron DeSantis runs and gets elected, and assuming that Jared Moskowitz, of course, he would have to run again in 2024. I believe it's just a 2-year term.
Right.
But, do you think he would still be pals with Governor DeSantis, and would that help Florida, hurt Florida? What do you think will happen to that relationship if Ron DeSantis became the next president of the United States? And is that something we should be concerned about?
Well, I definitely think there is a ongoing, relationship between the two. You don't get 2 appointments for no reason. I think that's something the voters should look at and determine if that's something that's of concern to you. But what I will say is that, Jared, if he does win and he is serving in Congress, hopefully he does the right thing, and make sure that no matter who is the president of the United States, whether you know them or not, you hold them accountable. You do what's right for the people that have duly elected you, and that's kind of my position on this matter.
Okay, fine. We mentioned, of course, January 6th. I assume you've been watching some of the hearings. What's your take on that? Obviously, you haven't been around that long. You're only 22, but this has got to be one of the biggest crises in the United States. What's your take on what happened on January 6th, Donald Trump's role in that, and do you think he'll be brought to justice because of it?
Well, I definitely believe January 6th was a very, very frightening day in our democracy, in our republic, democratic republic. It speaks volumes as to what occurred that day. We were a laughingstock with all of our major allies and nations. They were very concerned with us. We were a laughingstock to our enemies, really, but our allies were really concerned with what was going on. No matter what, we should make sure that we have the peaceful transition of power. I was in college at the time. I remember talking to my classmates in my political science classes about this, and we were very concerned that our country would not survive that day, and glad it did. And we had the peaceful transfer of power, and whoever is, going to be the next Republican nominee should totally be in agreement that January 6th is a horrible day and should vow to never have that happen again, especially when you're the current president of the United States and you lay back for 6 hours just hoping, if something goes your way. That's not what a president would do. That's not presidential. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, should have been more aggressive. He should have went on national TV like President Biden or President-elect Biden was saying at that time, condemned it. But no, he kept playing back and forth with it, didn't really do much for 6 hours. And that had a very horrible mark on our country. And hopefully that does never happen again in America.
Okay, just by way of your background, you're a resident of Davie, Florida, is that correct? Davie?
Well, I am moving, correct. So I should be going to either Margate or the West Boca area for this primary.
All right, but as far as the Constitution of the United States, I think you're good as long as you're a Florida resident. You don't have to actually.
That is correct. That is correct.
But you got to move into the 23rd district just because you think it's the right thing to do, even though you don't have.
I think it's the right thing to do. When I answer this question, I am transparent. I do let the voters know, of course, and you are correct. You don't have to technically be in the district, but of course you would want to vote for yourself, right? So I'm going to make sure I go to a district, and you never know what the future might hold. If I don't get the nomination this time, you never know what I might run for again.
Well, make sure you vote for yourself because it might be a close.
Exactly.
All right.
Right.
Now, all right. So you're very much aware of obviously Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and by the way, Davie is that still Broward County?
Broward County. You're right.
That's
Correct.
Correct. So in Parkland, of course, was Broward. So you should have a pretty good take on what happened at Parkland. So what will you do, or what are your positions on gun ownership and age requirements and background checks? Let's hear what you would do if you went to Washington to try to stave off all of these mass shootings. By the way, a mass shooting, I just read this morning, is any shooting where 4 or more people are injured. They don't necessarily have to die. So what would you do if you were in Washington by way of getting this situation rectified or improved?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I was a Broward County resident for many years, so this definitely touches home. I was in high school at the same time the shooting occurred. I volunteered for the March for Our Lives movement. I know some people from Parkland as well, and hope to earn their support if they're still registered to vote here. But I'm in 100% support of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act that was just passed by Congress and signed by the president. I know it's not enough, but it does do a lot to save a lot of lives and prevent a lot more mass casualty events. I would support licensing for guns and insurance for guns. If we have motor vehicles that have to have insurance, and you have to be licensed to drive a motor vehicle that can kill someone, why not do the same thing for a gun if you could kill someone? That seems basic. That's something I would support in Congress. I would support gun safety storage requirements, and like in the many other developed nations in the world, this is not a radical idea. Many other developed nations do this. So that's something I would work for. I would work towards removing legal liability from gun manufacturers. That's something I fully support as well. These gun manufacturers, their commercials, if a family believes or a victim's family believes it was misleading, or if a commercial in some way just to get sales provokes someone to do something, they should be held accountable for that. The legal system should hold them accountable, and a jury of their peers should be able to decide that. So these are some of the measures I would support in Congress to handle this issue. It's personal to me. I know people who were part of the mass casualty event there in Parkland. I know people through volunteering and I would, definitely support, the agenda to help and stop these mass violence issues that our generation is facing right now. I'm coming from the generation that had to deal with these code reds. I remember that growing up in school. So, yeah, I would definitely do that in Congress.
Okay, at age 22, you're a long way off from collecting Social Security. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's a very important thing in Florida. I am a Social Security recipient, and I worked most of my adult life, of course, and it's an entitlement, they say, based on my earnings. What would you do to ensure the continuation of Social Security, that it not be eroded?
Well, I definitely believe, first of all, we should protect and defend Social Security, protect and defend Medicare. Those are programs that are, so important to so many millions of Americans. These are programs that were designed to help our fellow Americans. And not only that, I will work to make sure that we don't privatize Social Security. I believe that's very important. We should take a look into also removing the cap on earnings so we could get more money into the trust fund for Social Security. So we could tax those who are making more money, not just in the first $138,000. That will increase the lifespan of the program. And you're right, I have a long ways away. Hopefully you'll still be there by then as well. Hopefully by 2100, I'll co-sponsor legislation that does that as well, read some legislation about that. And as far as Medicare goes, I know you didn't mention it, but it's around the same thing. On Medicare, I believe we should, work with the current marketplace. I know we have Medicare Advantage plans for 20 years. I have experience in that industry. I do insurance, so I know that. But we should create a public option. We were promised a public option in 2008. We didn't get a public option in 2010 or so. We got Obamacare, which I am not 100% satisfied, but it did help a lot of Americans get health insurance. So we should keep ACA. We should keep Medicare and expand that into a public option and let the people decide and let the market compete against a more better improved Medicare. That means for me, I don't know if there's a lot of other candidates talking about this, but removing the deductibles. It's just crazy how you have to have a deductible right when you go in the hospital on regular Medicare. Doing things like that, I believe, will make the system, the original system, better. And then the private market insurance plans are going to have to compete. They're going to have to come up with better ways to try to get people over to their plans. And I think that's something that's fair enough, and that will be a good compromise for the people. So I definitely believe in protecting those two programs.
Okay. Do you have any children, by the way, or?
No, not yet. Not planning anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the big issues of the day, of course, is the repeal of Roe v. Wade and the woman's right to choose. So I'm sure I could guess what your view is, but why don't you tell your prospective voters what your feelings are on that abortion?
Well, I definitely believe the Dobbs decision was the wrong decision the Supreme Court made, and it just proves to us how the Supreme Court is now just a political arm of the Republican Party. It's not what the majority of Americans wanted. This has been protected right under the Constitution or the interpretation of the Constitution for half a century. And it's just unbelievable what the Supreme Court did. It's going to harm a lot of Americans. People are going to go towards some measures that might be harmful to them because of this decision. I believe in the right to choose. We shouldn't push one religious ideology down onto millions of people. That's not what America is about. America is about doing what you think is right, whatever your religion is about. You should be able to come to that determination on your own. And I believe that's what pro-choice is all about. It's giving the people the option, depending on what you believe in, you make your own decision between you and your doctor. And I think we should look at in Congress, I'll look at expanding the Supreme Court. I believe that's going to be very important. They don't represent the majority of Americans no more. That means we have to step up and expand the court. I'll work with my Republican colleagues on this. I know they'll disagree, but that's what I'll fight for. We need to also, work towards codifying Roe. And I'm going to also put it out there. We Democrats, our party, has not been doing enough. They've had this issue for 50 years. Obama ran on this issue. in 2008, 2010. Why do we wait until 2022 to keep fundraising and keep, people engaged in the process when we didn't do enough to protect them when we did have the power back then? So I think we should do what's right. If we do win the House and the Senate again, and hopefully by more majority, that's what we should work to do. That's what I'll do in Congress, and I am passionate about this. So that's my kind of take on it.
Sure. In a related subject, I was watching CNN yesterday, and there's an interesting case. I was just curious, I'll run this by you. There was a pregnant woman that was using the high occupancy vehicle lane, HOV lane, which the rule is 2 or more occupants or people. And she was pulled over and she said, well, I have a fetus growing inside of me. I'm pregnant. And do you think that should allow someone to use the HOV lane? And if you do think that, because some people feel life begins at conception, and if it's a child developing in the womb, that it should be considered as a second person. How are the police reasonably supposed to make that determination in the field? I mean, people are pregnant before they show the pregnancy. So what's your take on that? Are pregnant women, should they be allowed to use the HOV?
Well, I'm going to leave that determination to the states, because that's the way it works right now with this Dobbs decision, unfortunately. But, if that's a valid point she made. She said, if the government thinks that that is the case, then why can't use the HOV lane? And I think that was a very interesting argument she made. And, we'll see what happens with the different states and how they're going to treat that issue.
Okay, fine. Turning now to international. Of course, if you go to Washington, if you're elected, you may have a chance to influence national policy and our defense and relations with other countries. So you must have some opinions on the war in Ukraine. You have the floor. Tell us briefly what you think and how you think it will end, if you think it will end, and what should we be doing more to help Vladimir Zelensky in fighting off this illegal and war crime invasion of his homeland?
Well, I definitely want to stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Ukraine has been dealing with this unjust invasion for many, many days now. It's almost been half a year. I think 150 so on days. It's unbelievable what that has done to the whole global economy and our markets. So I definitely am in support of any measures that would bring peace. We need peace. We need a peace agreement. We need it now. We need to do something to make sure that Vladimir Putin, gets out of Ukraine, and that we come up with an equitable solution. That's a voiced outburst in Congress. I don't believe in more wars. That's something I'm 100% against. The last thing our country needs is to go into another war like Afghanistan, but we should still be working, of course, to protect any of our potential allies or any democracies out there in the world. And we should protect Ukraine with whatever way we can without provoking the situation even more. That might mean, sending diplomats to Russia to try to get them to back off. And, that's my take on the situation. Does that mean more military escalation? I am not necessarily in favor of more military escalation, but if the situation proves itself, that's something that we're going to have to all come to a decision with when we vote on that in Congress.
So another thing making the news is Brittany Griner, the Olympics basketball player, was arrested and charged with possession of, I believe it was vape cartridges with cannabis oil in it, that she claims was accidentally left in her luggage, that she had no intent. She's already taken a plea of guilty, and she's throwing herself pretty much at the mercy of the Russian courts, if there is such a thing as mercy in the Russian courts. Right. They have 99% conviction rate. And all of a sudden now, this minor drug bust has become the focus of a possible international bargaining chip. that apparently there's a munitions guy, a Russian guy that we're holding that Putin would like to see released. Do you believe that we should release Brittany Griner and let out somebody who has such a history of involvement with violence and munitions? Do you think that that would be on the table, or do you think that we should not negotiate that?
Well, first of all, I do want to, stand in support of the basketball player Brittany Griner. She's a fellow American. She, fortunately, found herself facing the law in Russia. I think there should be some sort of equitable settlement here to the situation. Maybe we bring her back home, but punish her here at home with a small sentence or ankle bracelet, something like that. That way she can return to her home country, the United States. As far as making a deal, releasing someone who has done so much harm, he's an arms supplier, right? That's the person you're talking about, right? So I don't think that should be on the table. I'm going to see what the president and vice president are going to do on the situation and see what we're going to do. But, I don't believe that should be on the table. Now, if it comes down to it, I think that's something that the president's going to have to decide on it. I'll be a voice to support whatever the district believes on this issue as well. We'd love to hear their commentary on the situation as well. But my position right now is that we should do whatever we can to bring her home, but just releasing someone who has done so much harm to our world, supplying weapons to just horrible, people who were terrorists as well. It's just too much of a price to pay.
Okay. As long as you're in the international arena, many of the voters in this district, of course, are Jewish and have a strong connection with Israel. So what's your take on Israel as far as is there any possibility that we'll ever see peace there? Are you in favor of land for peace, where Israel cedes land in order for guarantees on its security? Do you favor a two-state solution? What do you think can be done? This has been going on as long as I've been alive. Well, Israel was born in the same year I was, 1948. But for decades now, everybody comes along and says, we're going to fix this situation. Do you think it can be fixed? And would you want to work on any kind of foreign relations committee? Does this have any interest to you in solving the Middle East problem?
Definitely. I definitely believe a majority of my voters in the district feel heavily on this issue. We have a strong Jewish community in the district. So I am in support of a two-state solution. I also believe that we should continue to defend and protect Israel. I think that's something that's important to the United States and to our district, and I will represent their interest in Washington on that particular issue. Now, there is situations where there are valid points to the BDS movement and whatnot, but I will be against BDS as far as that's concerned. But there is that should be looked at, though, the concerns behind that movement. But it just doesn't make sense why we would back our support from Israel, which is a very strategic partner in the Middle East for the United States. So we should make sure that there's peace. We should hold people accountable as well. At the same time, I believe we can do both.
Okay, that's great. All right, so my final issue, I want to go back to my, if I can, I don't know what happened to the share screen thing, but, oh, here it is. Okay, so this is what I ask all the candidates. I'm not singling you out, but
Okay.
yeah. All right, so let's just go down here. So here's the flag of the state of Florida. And I have two issues with this flag. The first is it's remarkably similar to the flag of the Confederacy, which it probably traces its roots back to the Confederacy, with what they call the Jack, the X. And the other thing that I have an issue with is this motto, "In God We Trust." That's the state motto of Florida. It's also the state motto of the United States of America. Now, last Sunday, there was an article in the New York Times, a full-page ad, excuse me, paid advertisement, said, "I'm secular and I vote." And what this is this fellow, I think his name, let's see, Brent Michael Davids, he claims that the largest religious denomination are atheists. I happen to be an atheist. That means that I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but I do believe in the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. I believe in being kind to people, so I'm not a totally insensitive, but I just don't believe in organized religion. And his position is that we should keep religion out of government and social policy, keep religion out of the schools, keep religion out of the bedrooms, personal lives, use my tax dollars only for evidence-based, not faith-based purposes. And his organization, if anybody's interested, is FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation /NYT, or just, you can just go to ffrf.org. So now what I'm showing you now is the Pledge of Allegiance, which first version was 1892. This is the original wording, one nation indivisible. They revised it again in 23. They added a two and so on, but it wasn't until the 50s that they put in one nation under God. And this was, of course, after World War II. Senator Joseph McCarthy was scaring everybody in this country, claiming that if you're not a believer in God, you must be a communist. And, you know, they had all these hearings and people were calling all kinds of names and so on. So what my question to you would be, do you think that there's too much religion influencing this country? Do you think that when I walk into a government building, I should walk by a flag that states, "In God we trust"? What do you feel about separation of church and state? I'm not hearing.
Okay, there we go. Wonderful.
Okay. That's
well. I definitely believe our founders wanted a separation of church and state, but that doesn't mean that you know, you cannot practice your own religion. I believe everyone should be able to practice whatever religion they believe and, you know, work for what they believe in. And that's the beauty of what makes America work. So I'm in full support of protecting that particular right in the Constitution.
That's fine. And again, the First Amendment of the Constitution, the First Amendment is freedom of religion. And I fully support that. My position is, if you have a religion, I respect it, and I respect your right to worship in the privacy of your home or in your church or synagogue or mosque. That's fine, and I will fight to the death to uphold that right, because that's the founding bedrock principle of this country. The Pilgrims and the Puritans and coming over here so that you could be free from all of that. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the institutionalization of religion by government, putting it on our currency, putting it on the Pledge of Allegiance, putting it on a flag in front of a government building. That's forcing me as an atheist to affirm a belief in something that I'm not comfortable believing in. So I want you to address that, not the freedom to worship, which we all believe in that, but should this be removed from currency, from the Pledge of Allegiance, and from the state flag of Florida? That is the question specifically.
Well, I believe that's a great question. I believe that, you know, the people should be able to decide on that particular issue. The way I feel about it is that's the way of country has been run for many, many years. You know, I don't have any particular, you know, offense to the way it's ran right now as far as those things go. But if it does change, I believe the people should be able to decide on that, or the people should be able to hear, you know, make their voices heard on this. And whatever the people say, we should try to look towards doing. But you know, I think that's something that we're gonna have to take a look at closely. And as a member of Congress, I will be in full support of listening to what my constituents feel on this issue.
Sure, but you know, let me just say, you go back to the founding fathers and tradition and everything. But for example, the Pledge of Allegiance, including one nation under God, you know, the people that are against abortion are saying that this is abortion, legal abortion is a fairly recent Roe v. Wade was, I think, 1973, that it doesn't have a long history and it doesn't have a long tradition, legal abortion. So I'm putting to you, neither does One Nation Under God, which came in around 1953, maybe 20 years before Roe. You know, how can you defend inserting something in the 50s during this McCarthy hysteria? Do you still believe that should be in the Pledge of Allegiance? You know, when you go into a courtroom now, they used to make you say, so help me God, when you put your hand on the Bible. Well, now
Right.
you don't have to do that. I think you can just say, I so affirm. So the courts have taken God and the Bible out for those that don't believe in it. Don't you think the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag, the currency, don't you think we should remove any reference to religion? Sure, let people practice on their own. That's what America's all about. But why should it be up there? If you were to walk past a government building and it said, in Buddha we trust, or in Allah we trust, you might feel excluded if you were a Catholic or a Jew or you know, what have you. I'm an atheist. Any reference to religiosity on a government building, I find excluding me. I don't feel welcome in a building that forces me to walk by a sign that says, in God we trust. Please address that specifically. Can we be a secular society and still support freedom of religion? That's the question.
Well, I believe that's something very important. I believe that's something we should definitely work towards, possibly. Again, I would have to refer to what the people are going to tell me, what I'm going to hear from my constituents. Now, me personally, I believe you do have a valid point. Now, I just don't know how far I would go towards supporting that particular point in Washington. But what I will say is that you do have some valid points that should be looked at for sure.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the solidarity with me on that.
No, no worries.
All right, in the last minute or so, you know, they usually say, what books are on your night table, or what magazines or newspapers do you read? Do you have any reading material that you regularly consult that helps shape your opinions?
Well, I definitely look at CNN, MSNBC. You know, I take a look a little bit of Fox News just to get the other side's opinion, and also take a look at, you know, professional development material, authors like Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins. Those are a few figures that, you know, I do take a look at and look up to as well. So, you know, that's kind of my reading material. You know, I stay abroad on what's going on in the world and stay updated, and you know, with everything going on, I definitely said, you know, even though I'm not 25, I'm going to make my case to the people, let the people decide, and you never know, I might try again.
Okay, why don't you now just give us a closing statement? Keep it about under 2 minutes, and especially address my constituents in Century Village. This is an over 55 community. Start off by, if elected or when elected, let's be optimistic.
Right.
Here's what I will do for the residents of Century Village. Go ahead.
Well, when elected, what I'll do for this residents of Sentry Village, I'm going to protect the social programs that we discussed earlier, Social Security, Medicare. I'm going to fight for your interest in Washington. I'm going to make sure that we do what is right for our elderly community, who I believe we're not doing enough for. They have contributed a lot to our country. They have, you know, done so much for us. And it's time for our country to, you know, do the same for them and for all people of America. And I hope that you take a look at my progressive viewpoints, even if you don't agree with them. I hope you look at a young man here who's trying to make his case to you and that wants to serve you in Washington and work for you and not the special interest in DC. That's what's so wrong in our country. And the way the system's set up is something I'm totally against, with how you have to have a lot of money to even make a case. So that's why I always welcome any opportunity to get my voice out there, my opinions, and make my case to you. Even though I am not 25, I hope to take the spot of the youngest congressman in American history to represent you, Century Village, and all of the 23rd Congressional District of Florida. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Michaelangelo, we're very, very impressed with you. I just wish there wasn't this, you know, question about your eligibility, but we'll see what happens. what can you say to anybody that says, well, until this thing has really been reviewed by the Supreme Court, am I possibly wasting a vote to cast it for somebody that's so young? How would you address that concern?
Well, this issue has already been reviewed by the Supreme Court, not as far as the age, but as far as eligibility. The Supreme Court said in 1979, eligibility of members of Congress are a political issue. And as long as the clerk of the House reads my name on the roll, which it is a Democrat, so there's a high chance they would do that, I'm going to be on the roll. Now, if someone, any of my colleagues, so I'm sure some of my Republican colleagues would object, we're going to make sure that we get a full vote on the floor. And you're not wasting the vote as well, because you're making what you believe heard. You're making who you think wants you to be represented in Congress. So I believe that you should definitely cast the vote for who you believe in, and hopefully that person is me. I hope to represent your interest, and you have my number on my website. It's all public information as well. Look forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for this opportunity, Fred. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure meeting you as well.
Okay, best of luck. I think you'll be number 2 on the ballot, right behind
That's correct.
Wilson. And so we wish you the best of luck, and we're again thankful that you came over to Sentry Village the other night. And if there's anything we can do, if you need any help or anything, just let us know. And thanks again very much. We've been talking with Michaelangelo Hamilton, one of the youngest, well, actually the youngest candidate in the 23rd Congressional District. And he's hopeful that if he's elected, that he will be seated, and he cites 1797 precedent and a Supreme Court ruling. And who knows, stranger things have happened in this country. Michaelangelo, best of luck, and we'll hopefully in the future, if you don't make it this time, I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more from you. You're very, very talented and eloquent and articulate spokesperson. And good luck, sir.
Thank you so much, Fred. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you soon. Thank you.